Hello, Year 7. Hopefully by now you've watched the video from Mr. Bodgers and you have realised a little bit about what might be involved in algebra. Now, if you've never done algebra before, that's okay. We're going to do a little activity today to just try and help you figure out what algebra actually is all about. Now, before we start, we've got three bits of terminology there. Pronumerals, an unknown variable, and a variable, an unknown and a variable. So what I'm going to get you to do is, if you've got a printer, it's up to you. You don't have to if you don't want to. Can you go and print this sheet out? You can pause the video while you go and do that. And I want you to either print it out or just write it down in your book, okay? Or on a piece of paper if you don't have your book. So the first thing I want to do, and obviously pause whenever you need to go off and get something. I want to go over what a pronumeral is. So I opened up your textbook on this page here. This is page 342 for those of you. Remember, it should be in your book section of your iPad. And they gave me some terminology there. A pronumeral is a letter of an alphabet or a symbol used to represent one or more numerical values. So I went back to my sheet and I wrote down pronumerals are a letter or symbol used to represent a number. So really all you need to know is that a pronumeral in algebra is just a letter, okay? That's all you need to know. Now, an unknown, I actually looked that one up on good old the internet. And on the internet, I looked up unknown and algebra because I wanted to know what it was in algebra. And it says here, in mathematics, an unknown is a number we do not know. They're commonly used in algebra, where they are also known as variables and represented by symbols. So an unknown is obviously a number that we don't know the value of. Now, hopefully, you're starting to see a little bit of a pattern here, but we'll see how we go. And then the last one is variable. And if you looked in your textbook here again, they've also got variable here for us. And a variable is a pronumeral that represents more than one numerical value. Oh, okay. So, basically a variable, I wrote, is a term used in algebra that means we use a letter to stand for a number. I've missed that, sorry about that. Stand for a number that we don't know the value of. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that a pronumeral is an unknown, is also a variable. So there are three things that mean exactly the same thing. So in your travels over the next week or so, you're probably going to find these words quite a bit. And you just need to know they all mean the same thing. A pronumeral is a letter that we use in algebra. We don't know what that value of that letter is, and sometimes it could be called the variable. All right, so just in case you come across those three words as we go, then you just know they all mean the same thing. All right, so today, can you go and get, you might need to pause the video in a minute, can you go and get some tiny teddies if you have some packets of tiny teddies? If you don't have tiny teddies, if you've got little packets of any kind of biscuits, you could have shapes, you could have, I don't know, if you've even got packets of lollies, I mean, that's fine. So what I need you to do is get about 5 or 6 packets, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at what each of the sets of packets represents. So if you haven't got any packets, can you stop the video, pause it for me, and go and get them, and then start up again when you've got some packets. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to algebra using packets of tiny teddies. All right, so in words, what do I have there? That looks pretty disgusting, doesn't it? You can't really see that at all. So I'm going to draw a little diagram. You actually have one packet of tiny teddies. So what do we write in words? One packet of tiny teddies. Now, if you've got something else, you can write one packet of whatever you've got. Okay? Now, do you know how many tiny teddies are in that packet? No, you're not allowed to open them. So what we're doing is we're using our tiny teddies packet as being our unknown. Okay? Now, you need to know very soon, not right now, but soon, we're going to use the number of tiny teddies in that packet is going to be called X, because we don't actually know how many are in there, are they? Do we? And you can't open them to have a look. That's called cheating. All right. So the way that we write this in algebra, and that's what we're pretty much doing today, we're just doing an introduction, is we write 1 times, now we've got 1 packet of tiny teddies. What did I say? What letter, what variable, what unknown are we going to use to represent our 1 packet? We're going to use X. So in long notation, 1 times X means 1 packet of tiny teddies. And that's one way of using algebra, okay? It just represents something that we have concrete in our hands. All right, now that's long notation. Now short notation in math, some of you might know this. In mathematics, in algebra, you'll learn this in a lot more detail soon. We actually don't write 1 times X, because that's long notation. Mathematicians love to write as little as possible. Don't know if you've noticed that at all. And algebra is the biggest case for that. So in mathematics, the short way of writing multiplication is to actually take the times out and to write it just as 1x. That means I've got 1 lot of tiny teddies packets. And even shorter again, if I know I've got 1 lot of something, do I really need to write the number 1 in? Hopefully you said, nope, I don't. So in mathematics, your first little lesson on algebra, X stands for 1 lot of a packet of tiny teddies. So there's your first one. Can you write that down for me? Pause the video if you haven't had a chance to write that down or draw up your table yet. So draw up the table and write that down in your first section. No eating of tiny teddies or biscuits or whatever you've got yet. You get them at the end. All right, so the next one when you're ready. Pause the video if you're not ready. We've got a packet. Now, can you open one of your packet of tiny teddies or whatever you're using, and can you take out 1, 2, 3 biscuits or whatever you're using? You might be using lollies. So now, a little bit like what Mr. Bodgers did with his cup and then his 3 counters, we're using our tiny teddies packet like the cup, okay? Now, how many packets of tiny teddies do I have this time? Hopefully you said you've got 1 packet, miss. So that's what we're going to write in words. 1 packet of tiny teddies. Can you write that on your sheet or in your book, please? Now, that's not all we have, is it? No. What else do we have? How many biscuits? We also have, and 3 biscuits. Beautiful. So now we've got a different style of algebraic expression. So we're going to learn how do we write this, because algebra is all about abbreviating, writing as little as possible. Okay, so we're using symbols instead of having to write big words. That's pretty much all it's about. Okay, you're shortening, you're writing less than you normally have to. We're going to use symbols instead of writing words. That's all it is. That's really what all algebra is. Okay, so we've got 1 packet of tiny teddies. We learnt before that that was 1 times X plus, how many biscuits do I have? I had 1 biscuit and another biscuit and another biscuit. So I had 1 plus 1 plus 1. Now we learnt how to shorten 1 times X already, didn't we? We knew that that shortens to just X. If you still like to write 1X, you may. And do you think you can shorten 1 plus 1 plus 1 for me? I reckon you could do that on your own. That would be 3. So this little tiny teddies packet here, 1 packet with 3 biscuits, we could write that in algebra as X plus 3. Ooh, you're learning some algebra if you've never done that before. Right, let's try the next one. Pardon me. This time I have 2 tiny teddies packets. So let's write that in words. Write this in your sheet with me, please. 2 packets of tiny teddies. Now remember, what did we say? Our packets of tiny teddies are represented by X. So this time, instead of 1 times X, I'm going to write 2 times X, aren't I? Pardon me. All right. Shorten that for me. What did I say we do? In algebra, we take out the times and we squash the number and the letter together. That's how we shorten it. That's our shortcut. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Take out the times and it becomes just 2x. Beautiful. All right, next. What's our next one? Let's see if you can do the next one on your own. Can you pause the video and see if you can write down what are the words, what's the long notation, and therefore what's the short notation. When you're ready, start the video up again and see if you got it right. Pause. All right, here's the answer. So I have 2 packets of tiny teddies. So I'm writing 2 packets of tiny teddies. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 biscuits. Go away. So now I'm writing and 4 biscuits. You write the same thing for me. So remember, that means we're going to write 2 times 1 packet of tiny teddies equals X. And this time I've got 4 biscuits, so I'm going to do 1 biscuit plus 1 biscuit plus 1 biscuit plus 1 biscuit. And now let's practice our algebra. How could I shorten this even further? Because that's pretty much all that algebra is. So 2x from the question above, 2 times x we know, we take out the times, we squash the letter and the number together, and that becomes 2x. And now let's add 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and hopefully you got 4. Right, try the next one on your own. Stop the video, see if you can do it on your own. Here's the answer if you're not sure. So this time I have 1 packet of tiny teddies, and then I have and 2 biscuits. Oops, that's not how you spell biscuits, miss. Biscuits, and then I've got another packet and 1 more packet of, I'm not going to fish this in, I'm just going to put TT because I'm running out of room, of TTs and 2 biscuits. Okay, so how could I write that one? All right, so I'm going to write this one like this. So 1 packet of tiny teddies. What letter do we use for 1 packet of tiny teddies? Hopefully you said X. All right, and then I've got 2 biscuits, so I'm going to go 1 plus 1. And then I'm just going to write the next one on the next line. See how we go. I have 1 more packet of tiny teddies plus X. And then I've got 2 biscuits again, 1 plus 1. So hopefully you noticed, did I just ruin that? Yes, I did. There we go. Hopefully you noticed. Do you notice here? You've actually got the same thing twice. Did you notice that? So there's actually 2 ways we could write this. I'm going to show you the first way. So the first way I'm going to do in red. So if you have 2 of the same thing, do you remember using grouping symbols when you're in primary school? So if we have 2 of the same thing, it means we're doing 2 times whatever is repeated. So can you see what's repeated this time? We've got an x plus a 1 plus a 1, and then we've got x plus a 1 plus a 1. So I'm repeating x plus, what's 1 plus 1? Hopefully you said 2. Or I could just put them all together. So how many x's do I have altogether? I've got 1 there and I've got 1 there. So hopefully you said, well, there are 2 x's, miss. So shortening, I could write that as 2x. And then I've got 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. What does that make? Hopefully you said 4. So there you go. There's some brackets. Good old distributive law. You've actually seen a different style of tiny teddies and how it can be written just slightly different with brackets. All right, what about the next one? Pause the video, see if you can do the next one, and start it up again so you can check your answer. So here's my answer. My answer is I have 3 packets of tiny teddies. I might have enough room to write it this time. and 2 biscuits. Okay, so how am I going to write that? Well, I'm going to write 3 times x plus each biscuit separately, 1 plus 1. All right, so how could we write that in a shortened way? So 3 times x, remember we take out the times, we squash the 3 and the x together, that means 3x, and I add 1 plus 1, and I get 2. All right, last one. Let's see if you can do this one. Okay, this one's interesting. So here I have 2 tiny teddies packets. You can have a go and pause the video if you want to try it on your own. So I'm going to write 2 packets of TTs, because I'm running out of room, plus 3 biscuits, and 1 packet of TT, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 6 biscuits. Okay, so this is getting into an area of algebra where we can start collecting like terms. Oh, that's supposed to be TTs for tiny teddies. All right, so how do we write 2 packets of tiny teddies? Remember, 1 packet is x. So I'm going to write long version 2 times x, and I've added 3 biscuits, so plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. It's a long version. And then 1 more packet means I'm adding another lot of x, 1x if you wish. I'll do that properly. Let's do that again. 1 times x plus 6 biscuits means, I'm going to write it down here because I'm running out of room, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. All right, so how do we write that in shortened notation? Because as mathematicians, we do not want to write very much at all. So I have, you can look at this, I've got 2 packets here, 1 packet here. How many packets do I have altogether? Hopefully you said 3 packets, miss. So I have 3 lots of x, and I've got how many tiny teddies over here? Altogether, I've got, no, it's not 4, miss. I've got 3, and then I've got another 6. What does 3 plus 6 equal? Hopefully you said 9. Well done. All right, let's see if we can answer the end at the bottom. It says, short notation above is called an, well, that's called an algebraic expression. Okay, so whenever we do those shortened notation ones, that's called an algebraic expression and can be made up of everything and numbers written by themselves. Okay, so I know numbers written by themselves are constants, numbers written by themselves, and everything is, that's a good one. Going to have to look that one up and get back to you on that one. And a something is a number written in front of a pronumeral. Okay, I know that one. That one's called a coefficient. Okay, and let me see. We'll go back. So Mrs. Moore wrote this, so I have to try and remember the way she wrote this. Short notation above is called an algebraic expression and can be made up of everything and numbers written by themselves. Well, I know numbers written by themselves are called constants, and I know the number written in front of a pronumeral, like the 3 in front of that x, that's called a coefficient, and I'm assuming that everything probably stands for the letter that's got the number with it, and we know that up the top is called a variable, don't we? All right, so let's try that. Can you write that down in your book or on your sheet if you've printed it out? And that's the end of the lesson. Have a good day, Year 7.